Chapter 1 Prelude July 2022 The stupid bitch! Who did she think she was, calling him a racist? All he said was if people want to come over and live here, they shouldn't expect to change everything to be like the places they came from. And she had to come out with all that woke nonsense about respecting other people's cultures. What about British culture? When does anyone ever show that any respect? Guy strode down the road, head down, shoulders hunched. An empty beer can lay on the pavement in front of him. He gave it a violent kick, sending it skittering downhill ahead of him. She was so young, so naive, but she thought she knew it all. She wouldn't listen when he tried to tell her about his nan in Bolton, who always said she felt like a foreigner in her own country, now that she was the only white face on her street. What did she know about actually living in this multicultural society that she was always banging on about? How many immigrants were there down there in Hemel Hempstead? He stopped at the traffic lights, waiting to cross Lime Street, unsure where he was going except that he wanted to get away from Nicole and her university friends. He looked across at Wellington's column, and then, turning his head to the left, at the classical frontage of St. George's Hall. A bus moved off, allowing him to see the mounted statue of Queen Victoria, surrounded by parked cars. That's what she didn't understand. Liverpool used to be a great city at the heart of a great empire. Now, according to her, we were supposed to apologise for it all. What about all the lives that have been saved because people in Africa have access to Western medicine instead of relying on witch doctors? What about democracy and justice systems and technology? All those places would be a lot worse off if they were still ruled by tribal chiefs, who might kill you or cut off your hand at a whim. And if everything about Britain is so bad, why do so many people want to come here? The lights changed and he crossed the street. As he walked slowly down William Brown Street, between the magnificence of St. George's Hall on his left, and the pillared splendour of the Walker Art Gallery and the museum on the right, he thrust his hands deep into the pockets of his jeans, in an attempt to hide his despondency with a devil-may-care swagger. She had no right to dump him like that, after all the things he'd done for her. He'd even bought tickets for that concert she'd been banging on about. Celebration of musical diversity. A load of overseas students showing off in front of people like Nicole, who wanted to show how multicultural they were. He'd have gone along to it with her too, even though it was bound to be a load of... Still wandering purposelessly, he turned into the gardens at the back of St. George's Hall. The grass was neatly cut, and the beds were bright with summer flowers. There were plenty of people there enjoying the sunshine. Some were sauntering alone, or in groups, admiring the flowers and trees, or staring up at the statues representing the great and the good of Liverpool's past glories. How long before someone dredged up a link to slavery or some other misdemeanour, and there were calls for them to be torn down, like that statue in Bristol? Others were walking briskly, probably using the gardens merely as a short cut. Most of the benches were occupied, tourists eating ice creams and contemplating which landmark to visit next. Shoppers with bulging carrier bags taking a breather before heading back to find their next bargain. Young people walking with heads bowed over their phones. Guy walked up the broad path towards the memorial in the centre of the gardens. A stone pedestal with a statue of Britannia on top, surrounded by bronze figures of soldiers. There were more benches standing against the circular stone wall surrounding the monument, and sitting alone on one of them was a young woman. Her brown face, framed by a hijab in black fabric edged with something shiny, told him that she was a Muslim, and what his grandfather would have described as a dirty packy. Of course, Guy would never use such derogatory language. That was what Nicole didn't understand. Real racists treated people differently depending on the colour of their skin. He wasn't like that. He didn't care what someone looked like, so long as they recognised that they were living in this country, not the one they'd chosen to leave, and they had to fit in. Learn the language so they could chat to their neighbours. Keep the smells of their spicy cooking to themselves. Not have 10 kids in a 2-up, 2-down next door to his nan. The young woman was reading a book and jotting down notes on an A5 pad. Guy watched as she put the book down on her lap and reached inside a small backpack which lay on the bench beside her. She took out a bottle of water and drank deeply before returning it to the bag. Her fingers were slender, with neatly trimmed nails. Her skin was smooth and unblemished. Guy took a step towards her. She returned to her book without looking up. This was his chance. He would show Nicole that he wasn't a racist. He would ask this girl to go to the concert with him. She looked well fit, and the chances were she'd jump at the idea of going out with a white guy. With any luck, Nicole would be at the concert too. She'd made enough fuss about how she absolutely had to be there, and she'd see them together, and then she'd know what a mistake she'd made. He sauntered over to the bench. "Anyone sitting here?" "No." She looked up and smiled. "Feel free." Then her head went down again, and she turned a page in her book. "I'm Guy," he ventured. "And you are?" "Mariam." He sat down, leaving just a few inches of the bench between them. "Mariam?" he repeated. "That's an interesting name. Different." This observation elicited no reply, so he tried again. "Hot again today, isn't it?" "Yes," Mariam agreed without looking up. Then she shuffled a little way along the bench to expand the space between them. "But I don't suppose you feel it, being from—" "Blackburn." She lifted her head at last and looked straight at him, an expression of amusement on her face. "Yes, the heat is terrible there. Sometimes we have to put away our winter woolies as early as June, or even May." "No, but I mean where you really come from. India or Pakistan or—" She took a deep breath and let it out in a long sigh. "I was born in Blackburn. That is where I'm really from." "But your family, your mum and dad, are both from Manchester." Guy fell silent, conscious that he had not made a good start with this conversation. Mariam crossed her legs, turning her body away from him slightly, and putting down the pad of paper between them on the bench. Are you doing anything tonight?" Guy asked in desperation. "I mean, I've got tickets for this concert. Would you like to go with me? It's music from around the world. I expect you'd know some of it. Maybe you'd be able to help me appreciate it better." She lowered her book into her lap again and turned towards him just enough to look him in the eye. "You're asking me out?" she said in tones of deep scepticism, one eyebrow raised. Was she laughing at him? "Yes, I saw you sitting here on your own, and I thought how nice you looked." Guy hesitated over the adjective, unsure which words he could safely use to describe her. Nicole was always telling him off for objectifying women when he was intending to compliment her on her appearance. "And I've got 2 tickets, so I thought—" Mariam stared at him with an amused expression. "Well, that's very flattering, but I think my fiancé would take a dim view of me going out with a stranger that I met on a park bench." She was definitely laughing at him now. She thought it was funny that he was showing an interest in her. She was as bad as Nicole. What was the matter with girls these days? Or maybe she was frightened of what her family would do if they found out she'd been speaking to a man in public. They had all sorts of rules about that, didn't they? Your fiancé? I suppose your parents found someone for you. That's how your people do it, isn't it? But you don't have to go along with it. You're in Britain now. We have laws about forced marriage. That was another of Nicole's hobby horses, saving ethnic minority women from outdated societal norms. The woman laughed outright now. Forced marriage? You have no idea, do you? I'm not some 16th century princess who has to marry into the correct royal family in order to seal some international alliance and preserve peace in Europe. When it comes to who I get hitched to, I make the decisions. But you let them tell you what to wear, don't you? Guy countered, nettled by her derision. He reached out and took hold of the loose end of her hijab. You go along with this thing? He gave it a shake, leaning closer so that his face was close to hers. She shrank back, taking hold of the hijab and trying to pull it out of his grasp. It's a sign of male oppression, he continued. Let me take it off for you, and let's see what's underneath. He grabbed at the length of fabric with both hands now, rising to his feet to get better purchase. No, you don't! A loud shout from behind him coincided with an excruciating pain in his right arm as something hard and heavy hit it. The next thing he knew, his other arm had been twisted round and pulled up painfully behind his back. He struggled to get free, but his assailant was strong and had him at a disadvantage. Without knowing quite how, he found himself pinned up against the wall behind the bench, his face only millimetres from the stonework. Right, I've got him. It was a female voice, but strong, confident, in control. OK, Mariam, call the police.